Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn webinar. I'm Julie Cameron, a business growth specialist here at Action Coach Solihull. Firstly, I'd like to welcome all our listeners on Facebook and LinkedIn and all those on Zoom as well today. Please say hi in the chat boxes, ask any questions as we go along, and I will endeavour to get back to you. So our topic for today, as you can see on the screen, is all about great leaders. So in other words, are you a great leader in your business? Today is about you and your management team, just the senior people in your company and how they perform and how you perform to make sure that you're getting the results that you need for your business, because great performance comes down to great leadership and the management of the company. So the challenge is, if you're going to start building your business, you've got to be a great leader, and that's generally you or a few people. So think about it, okay? Think about those generals. The best generals are the ones that have the best captains. So the better you build your captains in your business and your team, obviously the better the performance level of yourself and your whole organization. So let's start with the fact that every human being out there has leadership traits. Okay, the question is, what level do we use them? So let's think about leadership and the traits that people are born with. Everyone has the ability to communicate, if I put my teeth back in. Everyone has the ability to have a vision. Everyone has the ability to have discipline, and so on and so forth. So the challenge is, what level are you using them? So if you sit down and look at your leadership characteristics and your leadership skills, are you using them enough, or are you using them not enough? Are you using them on a daily basis, or are you sitting there thinking, I need to do more of this? And that's where the whole difference of leadership is made, the actual desire to lead. And that's when you take people that have that desire to lead and you teach them those leadership skills. That's where you get great results in leadership. You can teach them the skills of leadership, skills of management, and we start to move them forward in that way, you know. But if they don't have that desire, then will they ever become that great leader? Now, when I sit down with anyone that's in the leadership position, just because you're in that position of leadership doesn't mean that you actually have the skills. Okay, so we need to look at those skills that can build our leadership style and our ability to manage at that higher level. So what are the key measures of a great leader? Okay, someone once said to me, you get the employees you deserve. And what they're simply saying is that great leaders attract great employees. Employees, and I know I did when I was coming through the ranks, they want to work for great leaders. So are you the type of person that employees want to become? And have you got a company that they want to be part of? So sit down and think about it. How often are you getting people sending you their CV saying, hi, I've heard of your company and I really want to work with you? It's a sign of great leadership, ultimately, because you're attracting those really great employees. Another one, a second sign of a great leader, is not only that they attract a great employee, but they build great employees. So if you think about it, anybody can hire great people if they get that position available in their organisation, but it takes more work to build great employees. So how do you build them? What do you do? How do you work with them to create a great employee in your company? And that's a really big part of leadership, is actually focus on building those great employees. Don't just hire people and keep them. Your goal is obviously to build them into great employees. And then the third benefit of being a great leader is that retain them. It's not only about the hiring. Will I get the choice right? People want to work with you. Not only do you get to build them into great people, from good to great employees, but you get to retain them. You know, one of the interesting things that we often see in a lot of companies is that employees outgrow their leaders. And people kind of look at us and go, oh, okay, that's interesting. What does that mean? You know, so if you're the leader of that business, of that company, that organization, and your employees grow faster than you, they grow more than you, they're going to leave because they don't necessarily see a future in the company. They don't see a future in their position, you know, and that often comes down to the fact that the business owner or the leader hasn't got a rush to be any better. There's not an element of growth in the business, and you're not focused on growing the business and moving it forward. Therefore, the ability for employees to grow with the business, and the more growth there is, the more they'll want to stay part of it. They'll want a career there. They'll want to enjoy it. And so all those parts of a great leader is really important. But how do we get there? Now, Brad always uses two examples of this. Brad Sugars, who's the owner and founder of Action Coach. He always uses two examples, and I appreciate that it is slightly a dated quote, but he always uses Bob Nadelli, who's the head of the CEO of Home Depot, one of the biggest retailers, and the second was Eric Schmidt, the head of Google. And when he asked the question, what's the number one piece of business advice you've got? Both of them said that you need to get a coach. Okay, your job as a leader of a company is to coach your people. And how do you coach them? How do you move them forward? How do you get the results that you want to get with your employees? Now you've got to sit down and say, well, how am I coaching them to get the maximum capability out of them? Because fundamentally, if you want to double your business, you've got to do one or two things. Okay, you've got to double your employee base. So in other words, if you've got 2 members of staff in your team, you've got to get 4. If you've got 50, you want 100. Or you've got to double the productivity of the employees that you've got. So if you've got those 2 employees, how are you going to make them work double hard? And it's really up to you which one of those that you choose. But I mean, speaking from a cost effectiveness kind of way, doubling the productivity is far more cost effective than going out and hiring twice as many people. And once you've hired extra people, you've then got to do all the work to get them across the line. So let's make sure that when we're a business owner and we have employees, that we're coaching our employees and getting them results. So fundamentally, how do we do that? And that's where we come from. That as a business owner and a CEO, the skills that we need are management and leadership. And in my opinion, most companies lack good management. We're getting better at leadership all the time, but we lack management. And by this, I mean that employees actually do need someone looking over their shoulder to get them to a high performance level. I've come across so many business owners in the past that kind of say that they don't want to manage like that. They don't want to be looking over their employees' shoulders. But actually, fundamentally out there, most employees need this 80% of the time. Management is the ability to manage that day-to-day resource, the day-to-day activities within an organization. Whereas the day-to-day performance of the staff leadership is the ability to give them direction and to get them moving and excited and passionate about all the wonderful things that you're going to do. And what we see is in this day and age is that so many people have those leadership skills. They get people excited, they're passionate about what they're going to do, but what they don't do is that they don't manage them. So in other words, they've all been to those amazing seminars, they've dropped on things like this, they've read those books, they've joined our book club, but the reality is without management, you're not going to achieve what you want to achieve. You're not delegating, you're abdicating. So therefore, day-to-day management is vital. And how do we measure this? Well, on screen at the moment, as it all comes swimmingly up. Okay, here we go. Oops, there we go. On the screen now, you'll see the point of power. And this is what usually happens is that management is the below the line stuff. So where you see the red dot on the screen, management is normally the things below the point of power. And getting them out of that is all about management and leadership. So what we need to find is that the lack of management allows what we often find is that the lack of management allows denial, blame, and excuses. The day-to-day lack of management allows people to go below the line. Good day-to-day management removes people from the blame, excuses, and denial and puts them above the line. So what we've got to make sure that we're doing is good management as well as good leadership. So if you sat down with every employee in your company, and I want you to think about this, don't look at this as 2 points, as in they're either above the line or below the line. But I want you to look at it as 6 points. So ownership, accountability, responsibility, blame, excuses, and denial. Each of them are individual points. So they're either in denial, they're in excuse land, they're in blame mode. You know, which are they in? Maybe they're accountable, maybe they're responsible, maybe they have ownership. But if you went and sat down and looked through your entire list of employees and said, where are they on that scale? You know, okay, you've mapped it out. And then I want you to look at the big picture. So what percentage of them are below the line? What percentage of them are above that point of power? And by doing that, you can quickly tell how much management is going on in a company and whether it's good management, good leadership, or both. So what's happening in your business right now? Are you better at management or better at leadership? Are you good at just the day-to-day stuff or better with your team in the motivation, the inspiration? Am I better with my senior employees or am I better with my employees? The challenge that most businesses face these days is that they'll find that they're better at one than the other. They're really either good at management or they're really good at leadership. But what they'll find is it's either one or the other. And the growth of a business is understanding how we are performing. So look at you, your senior people, and ask, am I a better manager or am I a better leader? Or are they a better manager or a better leader of the organisation? But one key thing you need to remember is that you don't all need to be leaders, okay? You actually do need some people who are purely managers. And then you also need to look at your business and realise that some of the time you've got leaders in management positions and other times you've got managers in leadership positions, you know? And you have to think that if you've got somebody who's a really good manager, and we see it all the time, somebody who's been an amazing manager and you think, yeah, I'm going to promote you, you're going to be a leader, we're going to put you in that position. But if you don't do that without training, it's not a good fit. You need to make sure that people are in the right positions. And you've got to understand the distinction between the two. Like I said, it just doesn't work if you promote a good manager to a leadership without the training that goes. They've gone past their skills or their ability level. And it's a big challenge for them. But it also creates a big challenge for the company and for the business owner, as the company can't grow past them. So let's start at the bottom of our 6 steps. Our 6 points above and below the line. So the first one what we're going to look at is looking at denial and work at how do we get that. So in the majority of companies, there are a number of people that are in that state of denial. So my question to you is, do you know who those people are within your organisation? Okay, I'll give you a few hints and a few tips. They're the ones that you've probably been with you for a while. They think they are a complete superstar. They think they're a rock star, but actually they're really bad, you know, and they believe that their way is the right way and nothing anybody says will make any difference. Okay? And no matter what size your business, whether it's a big or small, this person will always have that mindset. They believe that they are the world's best employee, but in reality, they're not. You know, they're not performing high. And the worst bit about it is that as managers, you know, we've created this employee, we've created this denial by allowing them to get away with this, you know, and we continually let them get away with their mindset, with this mindset that they are rock stars. You know, when you sit down and look at it, you've got to understand what it is that allows us, gives us that attitude. You know, we often say, you know, and I'm guilty of it as much as anybody else, I'm sure, out there, you know, better the devil you know, or that person has been round us forever and they are fine. It's harmless, you know. I know he thinks he's right, but that's like, you know, how he does his work and he gets it done and everything's fine. You know, but guess what? The problem is is that if you're allowing that person to be part of your company and part of your organization, what do you think the other employees are all going to think about? You know, all of a sudden they're going to think that this is okay, you know, and therefore you're going to allow their performance to shift. The only way to manage this is to actually confront people, to actually stand up and say, look, your performance levels aren't good enough. Let them know that their level of performance is no longer acceptable. And when you stop accepting this poor performance, then all of a sudden it changes the culture of the organization. Okay? Changes people's perspective in that now this person knows that you're not willing to accept the way that they've done it in the past. And the second thing that managing this is that you can remove them. You know, sometimes when you go in and you confront somebody and you realize that they're never going to change. And because that they're not willing to make a difference or move in the right direction. So sometimes you just have to remove them. Other times it works the other way, that actually you've never talked to them about what is acceptable performance. So therefore they didn't know. So therefore by talking to them, you're actually educating them. You know, but as I've got on the screen there in number 5, sometimes by managing it, you do need to remove it. And remember, as you grow as a leader, as a company grows, your people have to grow with you. Therefore, you're creating a culture within your organization, within your business, that you all want to grow and move together. Now, if you're not willing to do that, okay, and some people don't want to, you know, you've got to step aside and allow somebody else to do it for you. Okay, and you know, sometimes we found in business when we've gone into companies, you know, one of the best things that an owner can actually do is actually remove themselves in a way as a CEO, you know, and I'm not saying, you know, they're no longer or, you know, but actually sometimes by recognizing that somebody else could actually do a better job than you, then that was the better solution for the company. You know, and again, just to talk about Brad Sugars, you know, he always talks about action coach. He is action coach, you know, but he's not the CEO, and there's a reason for it. He doesn't actually really enjoy that work. He enjoys getting on stage. He enjoys doing like webinars like these. He enjoys the teaching side of it, but he doesn't enjoy the actual running of the business side of it. So he's much better at teaching than he is running the business. So therefore, he has employed people to do that for him. So creating denial, and by that I mean we as managers are actually creating that denial culture by allowing people and letting people get away with it. We've got to manage it. We've got to confront it. We've got to tell these people that we need them to step up, and we need to tell them that their behavior is no longer okay. So the second one, so once you've got your employees out of denial, we are then going on, they then potentially move up to excuses, you know, and we've all heard excuses. I want you to sort of like think about a person that always makes excuses. And I always think back to children. Children are classic. Children are always coming up with excuses about why they don't want to do something, you know. But think about it in your organization, you know, when people move up to excuses, here they'll blame someone or they'll come up with excuses to why it didn't get done instead of taking responsibility. Now, we as managers, again, we have the ability to create a culture of excuses. And I'm sure you can think of somebody, you know, 1 or 2 people within your organization at the moment that are really good with excuses and they use them all the time, you know. But think about why we get excuses. And the first reason is because we ask that why question. So we are creating that culture. You know, just think, if something's not getting done in your organization, what is the first thing that you ask? Why isn't this done? Why isn't it finished? So it naturally leads somebody, you're that person that you're asking that question to giving you an excuse. Okay. So actually, thinking about it as a manager, maybe you need to sit down and think, well, maybe I need to change the way that I'm asking those questions so I get a better result. So why do we let people give excuses and accept them? As business owners, primarily it's because we don't have enough information. What do I mean by that? Okay, so imagine there's a job that one of your employees was doing, which is a job that you used to do, okay, and you walked in and they hadn't done it, and you asked that classic question that I've just been talking about, why? Their response, takes 2 hours to do it. Now, the difference is that if you've done that job yourself and you know it only takes 20 minutes to do it, okay, but because you've got that knowledge, because you've got that data, you have that opportunity to turn around and say, I'm not accepting your excuse because I know it only takes 20 minutes to do that job. But then think about it. If you didn't know how long it normally takes to do that job, and you were given the excuse, well, it takes 2 hours to do it, that's why it's not finished yet, you wouldn't call them out over it. You wouldn't have that information to hand to call them out over the fact that actually it only takes 20 minutes. So very simply put, the more data you have, the more excuses you remove, the higher the performance of the team. Another thing to think about, and the reason you could be getting excuses could be that you do it. You give excuses. When people ask you a question, are you giving an excuse? Therefore, you're creating that culture of excuses in your organization. So remember, if you're going to call out your team for making excuses, then you need to be doing that to yourself as well. And it's a huge challenge for a lot of business owners, keeping themselves at that performance level that you want from the rest of your team. So instead of using the why questions, use forward thinking, moving questions. What do I mean by that? So instead of asking why, say it differently. So, you've walked into a room, the order hasn't gone out for a customer just yet. So you could say, instead of why isn't this done, you could say, so I realize this isn't done. We've got to get it to the customer in the next 2 hours. What has to happen? What are the first 3 things we need to do to make sure that this is ready inside the next day for our customers? All of a sudden you've asked a forward-moving question. You're not looking for the excuses, you're looking at the solution. Okay, so I've moved away from the why question to what do we need to get done. Okay, so all of a sudden we're all focused on moving forward. Another challenge that we often find is that business owners will then fix whatever problem it is themselves rather than managing it properly, and by this I mean, let's get enough data to be able to move it forward, to ask those questions, hold ourselves to a higher standard than the people around us. So, you've just, for example, you've got one particular employee who's always giving you an excuse. Now, all you have to do is to turn to that employee at some point and say, you're always giving me an excuse as to why things can't or won't get done or don't get done. Say, I don't want excuses. I'm not looking for excuses. What I need from you is to give me solutions. Now you've told that employee that excuses are no longer acceptable, only solutions. Okay? So let's move up to blame. Blame culture. Here we go. So we've gone from denial, then we've gone to excuses. Now we're moving on to blame. And again, as managers, we need to look at what sort of things do we do to create blame. As with excuses, we ask the why question. Well, with blame, it's the who question that starts to get used. Who did this? Whose fault is it? Who's responsible for making sure this is done? Who didn't get this job finished in time? So when we're asking that who question, all of a sudden, all you're creating is the need for that person to blame somebody else. I mean, we've all heard it, in particular with children again. So children and team members, responses sometimes can be quite similar. It wasn't me, it was them, pointing the finger at somebody else. And what we do need to realize is that blame will come about because of the questions we're asking. So the key behind it all is to ask better questions. You know, you need to also think that the moment you see blame is when you know that the trust is disappeared in the company, because blame kills trust. Okay, so just think about it, you know, and I want you to think about an organization that you've maybe worked in, or a business that you're working with at the moment. If somebody's looking, if people are looking for someone else to blame, they always look to another department or the new guy. Because people who have a good relationship with each other, they're not going to throw each other under the bus. So they're looking to a person or a department or somebody who they don't have that good relationship with. So they're going to throw under the bus somebody that they don't know, someone in a different department, someone from another company. There's always somebody that they can blame, but the trust level goes down dramatically. And with that, the team performance goes down well as well. Now, again, the reason we get blamed is that you do it. You as a business owner may do that, or you allow it, as with the excuses of denial. You're allowing this to happen, especially if you walk away. So again, you need to manage it. And as it says on the screen, it's those forward-moving questions that are so important. So get rid of the who questions. Get rid of those why questions and ask those forward-moving questions. For example, you know, what are the 5 things that we can do to get this on track right now, team? You know, or another one be, you know, I guess there's a mess right now, and we'll fix it later, but right now we need to get this out to the customer. So what are we going to do what are the things that we need to do to happen in this like 5-minute slot, in this immediate time frame, or the immediate future, to get this to the customer on time? Those are the questions which will help in managing the situation, and they will eliminate that blame. You know, you've got to build trust amongst people. What are we doing to build trust? Obviously, the more they get to know each other, the more trust they have, the more team building exercises they do, the better trust level within people, you know, and the perfect way of getting to know people that little bit better is understanding their profiles. So we at Action Coach, we look at people's DISC profiles. And I'm sure I will pop in the comment boxes and in the chat boxes shortly about DISC profiling. It's a perfect tool for people to understand each other that little bit more. It looks at people's communication styles and so on. And this stuff, you know, it all builds a level of trust, and therefore allows you to manage this whole blaming thing better. You know, it's all about naming the behavior and confronting it. So, for example, by saying to someone, you're always blaming someone else for what's going on, you know, and saying that I understand that at times when that's the case, you know, that it's someone else's fault. But in future, I don't want you to blame anyone else. All I want is your solution. So what are the solutions that brought me to allow me to understand that you're doing a great job? You know, and let's think about timing of management. You know, timing is everything. And it's always great to kind of look at a sports analogy, sports perspective, I suppose, at this time. You know, football started, you know, we've just had the Olympics and so on. But if you see somebody on a sporting team, we've often seen it, doing something wrong, okay? Who out there has ever seen the coach or the manager running out into the field at that moment, okay, and doing the whole management session at that time, okay? And sometimes it's exactly the same in business. And this is what we do. We try and manage in the moment. And actually, sometimes that is really actually bad for the company, because you need to first get them on that forward moving question first, and then come back and manage it later. You know, we often, you know, there's a TV program out there called Super Nanny, okay? And I know I'm really reverting back to children, but sometimes I want you to think how we deal with our children and also our business managers. It's a very similar style, okay? So think about Super Nanny, okay? Something's happened, okay? So we often put the kids on a timeout, okay? And then have a discussion once everyone's calmed down. And that's because timeouts work. And they work not just for the child or the person within the team, but also the manager or the business owner or the parent. You know, sometimes you need to give yourself space from what went wrong so you can actually get to the point of knowing how to manage what just happened. And it's the same with the sporting analogy. You know, people don't manage in the moment, they manage after. You know, so get them moving forward, get them on the job, and then come back and check in 5 minutes and see those things are moving well. You know, and then come back and later that day or later that week or the next morning, sit down with that person and examine and say to them, we need to examine what happened yesterday because we don't want it to ever happen again. And then all of a sudden you're managing properly, you're not managing in the moment, you're not running out in that field mid-game to try and change it. We're managing in a proactive manner and to do it at a time when everyone's calm, when the lesson will actually sink in and there's no need to fight back. So let's now talk about above the line or that point of power, okay? And it's about leadership. Now, responsibility is that first one that's above that point of power. And I want to define responsibility in basically 2 ways, that there's managed responsibility and there's self-responsibility. And there's a massive difference between the two. A lot of people will be responsible if they're managed. If you look over their shoulder, and by that I mean, if you look over their shoulder, if you're checking their numbers, if you're checking their work, if you're doing that, and that's fine. We want 20% of our people into self-responsibility and accountability, whereas we want 80% of our people in our company where we actually do have to manage them. And that means really straight. That could be like, I know a lot of people are out there are probably going, what? Julie's lost the plot, you know, but actually, you know, if as a business owner, I wanted everybody to be totally accountable for stuff and, you know, that they're all self-responsible, you know, I'm frankly living in a fantasy land because the majority of employees actually do need management. They need someone to look over their shoulder, you know, to get that high performance out of them. Yes, they'll get their job done, even if you're not looking over their shoulder, you know, but if you want them to be productive, if you want them to be high performance, you do need to check in on them. So it's the reality of the way that the world works, you know. Too many business people and business owners out there think that they can manage proactively rather than reactively. So as soon as you realize actually 80% of people actually need management, then your life becomes so much easier and so much better, and you can move your business forward. Okay. So what is managed responsibility versus self-responsibility? There are people who take full responsibility themselves. They have high productivity levels, high performance levels, because they know who they are. It's the way they are. It's people that's been trained into them. It's been managed into them. So we're able to manage ourselves and be highly productive. So even without someone looking over your shoulder, there is a percentage of people like that. It's not the majority though. One of the big keys in getting a person to that level of responsibility is that they know their job. And by knowing their job, I mean that they know it well. Okay. And we've all been in those positions where we've known our job really, really well, you know. But as a business coach, I find it too often that when I sit with people who are not performing in companies and ask them, you know, their job, you know, they don't actually know what their job is. And that's a massive challenge. They don't know their job. How are they ever going to perform at a high level? How are they going to ever get that massive performance? And fundamentally, that comes down to us as business owners. So first thing to ask is, do they know their key performance indicators? Do they even know what they need to perform to? Do they understand their job properly? So if you sit down and over the next couple of weeks with every employee in your company and ask them, will they be able to answer you? You know, give them after this a clear job description, a clear understanding of what their job is. You know, what impact do we think that that will have on everybody else in the company? Because I guarantee it will be that increase of productivity of people within your organization. It's a massive, massive part of leading people in responsibility, making sure that they know their job and how to do it. And one of the keys of understanding this is when someone gets to self-responsibility, they actually get to that point where they are promotable. Okay, so I just want you to think, about an employee that you've got within your organization. They perform well as long as you're looking over their shoulder. And by doing that, it's taking you 2 or 3 hours a week to manage them. So what happens if you work with that employee to design some strategies to get that 2 to 3 hours down to 1 hour? Okay. All of a sudden, that employee starts focusing on the things that they want to focus on. They become self-responsible. And it also frees up 2 hours of your time as a business owner. Just think what you could be doing with that extra 2 hours a week. Next, accountability. It's the next level. Let's pop that then on the screen. There we go. So once you get them to that point of self-responsibility, and that's through leadership, helping them know their job, helping them understand how many hours a week we want to manage them, helping them understand where they're at on that ladder and saying, you're doing a great job when I check on you. I want you to be doing a great job without me checking on you. Okay? And then we'll get them through to the next level of accountability. So again, that 80-20 rule is definitely here for someone to be accountable. They either got to be accountable for a set of numbers or they've got to be accountable for certain people. Okay. So what does that mean? If you promote somebody to be a manager of several people, now you can hold them to account for their employees, the people that they manage. Okay. Or people are held to account for a set of numbers. And I suppose in a way, that's why salespeople are often the most accountable people in a company, because you know how to measure them. You've got those numbers, whether it's leads, whether it's sales, whether it's conversion, so you're saying to your salespeople, you have to perform at that level. And if you're performing at that level, you're doing a great job. So it's easy to hold them to account because you've got something tangible you can measure it. The other thing that I want to say here is remember that 80-20 rule. You don't want everyone in your business to be held to account. You just want that 20% of your people, okay? And it's going back to their responsibility, but these are the ones that hit self-responsibility, okay? You can't have everybody within your organization being held to account. You have to train them to be self-responsible and then they move up to that accountability. One of the key things of having people that are accountable is that they want to be held to account. And it goes back to that desire. And we said it right at the very beginning about people have that desire, that want to be a leader. Okay. And it's the same here. If you're wanting to be held to account, that's how you know within your organization, those people that are wanting to be held to account or accountable. They actually want to hold you to hold them against those numbers. They actually want you to be strong with them. And if you're not, guess what? They're not going to work that much. They'll take the foot off the gas pedal. They want strength in their manager, in their leader. And this is where you start to create a team of leaders. Okay, you can actually coach them to manage them, lead, and really start to educate them. Okay. And that's what we do at Action Coach. We hold people to account that want to be held to account because they know that through that, their business will grow, it will thrive, and it will be the best that they want it to be. So as a business owner, with these people within your organization, as a leader, you become their coach or their mentor. And on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, your job is not actually working with them anymore. Your job is, once you've given them the job of managing people, is to work through them, work with them to get the job done. What we often see is that business owners hold someone to account and then they step around it. Okay? So if you've given somebody that role, that accountability to do a job, and you hold them to do a job, make them do the job. Don't then go and do the job for them. Too often, and we see it on a daily basis, business owners get, oh, well, it's quick, I'll just go and fix it myself. Or it might be quicker this time, but in the long run, it's going to be a lot slower. So when we're not as busy, I'll hold them to account. But just think about it. You're never going to get that person to perform at a high level because you're not holding them to account. So work with them, work through them, don't go around them. You've got to get them to a level to make sure that they are actually present within the business. Coach them, teach them how to fix problems along the way. Otherwise, you're always going to be in there and fixing the problems for them. And then ultimately, we want people to get up to the ownership level, which is what we've got on the screen at the moment. Now, this isn't ownership in their wallet, as in the fact of buying the business. This is the ownership of them in their heart, in their head. They feel like they're in a place that's perceived to be in their mind that they are, you know, it's their place. Okay, they feel a level of ownership in them. Now, sometimes they do overstep the boundaries, you know, and literally act like they own the place, and that's fine. You've just got to be strong with them, and you've got to keep them in line from that perspective. But what you've got to understand is that with their loyalty is that they're giving you, and you need to reward that loyalty with the loyalty back to them. Now, leading ownership is building real relationships with these people. You know, it's actually about being personal, I suppose, yeah, with them. But sometimes we go too far, and that's where we need to remember. Many business owners say that they're building a family within their business. No, they're not. You know, they're building a company. You know, it's not family. You know, it's not your family. Your family's at home. You know, and I find, unfortunately, a lot of business owners, you know, we're all guilty of it at some point. You know, we socialize with our staff, and they say it's good for team morale. Well, is it? Is it really? You know, you have to think, yes, socialize with your team. Your job as a business owner is to make sure you've paid the bill and leave before anything crazy happens. That's the owner's job. You know, your employees are not paid friends. Sorry. You know, I do suggest that you have a form of relationship with your employees. Absolutely, good quality, sound relationship with them. And it's important for them to know you know, you personally, and them know them personally. Put my teeth again back in. But remember, there is a line. So what is your style creating? You know, so I want you to look at your business right now, and you have to ask yourself the question, you know, what is it that you're creating? What is the level of management and leadership in your company that you're creating right now? Okay. Are you creating above the line behavior? Or is it below the line? How are you performing as a manager? How are you performing as a leader? Because as I've said before, they're both very different things, you know? But if you look at the other management people in your company, what is their performance doing? You know, how are they performing? How are they creating it? In many businesses, there are several different management styles within a company. And if you sit and look at it, you can see people creating blame, creating excuses, or creating that responsibility or that ownership. But once you start looking at how staff perform, all of a sudden you see, you know, what it is that you can see is being created by management or a leadership style, or it could be from the lack of management or leadership style. No, so what are the qualities of a great leader? You know, and, you know, I've talked about in previous webinars, you know, that passion and responsibility, you know, the ability to enroll people and inspire people, you know, create a vision, you know, but it's also about being decisive and knowledgeable. You know, a great leader makes decisions. A great leader just doesn't sit there and think, we'll think about that over the next 5 days. A great leader makes decisions when they need to make a decision. They're decisive. They act on knowledge. The greatest of leaders are the ones that know enough to be able to make great decisions. So get your knowledge levels up. You know, this could be through reading. You know, here at Action Coach Solihull, we run an amazing book club, you know, based on reading business books. We discuss our learnings and how we can implement this into our business. You know, we also run Profit Club, which combines networking and business education, both great ways of improving your business knowledge. You know, and I'll pop the details in the chat, you know, amazing, come along, see what they're like, but get those knowledge levels up. You know, let's look at vision and communication. A great leader has vision, which obviously, you know, as in the Enroll and Inspire, but that also got to be a great communicator. So, as a business owner, do you need to go out and get some lessons, do some lessons on the communication? Do you need to go out and do some study on how to be more decisive, read more books, or whatever it might be? Do you need to work more on having a better vision? Planning and disciplinary, also a great part, discipline even, a great part of being a great leader. Maybe you need to go and build your planning skills. And if that's the case, then go out and do it. Get a coach, drop me a note, be in touch, go on a course. Planning is fundamental in every business. I've seen also, you've gone down to number 6, the fun and personable. I've seen so many times when you look at it, the charisma of a great leader is so important. There's so many out there that people, often people think that a great leader can be standoffish and aloof, but actually it's the opposite. Great leaders are actually quite personable. They're fun to be around. People enjoy their company. They're personable with other human beings. And running a great company, it requires both of these things, great management and great leadership. So when we think about how do we actually get that, studying is one thing, like I've just said, reading books, listening to podcasts, coming on these webinars, things like that. That's a great way to get it. Or the other one is you can hire people with great management skills. So it's recognizing where you are a better leader or manager. And if you're the better leader, then make sure that you hire really good managers into your business. They're not great leaders, but they're really good managers. So you get both set of skills into your organization. And as it said there, you can learn it, hire it, or get coached in how to do it. And that's key. So great 6 tips to get great management. Let's pop them all up on the screen. Here we go. So let's look at some great tips on how to get the right management on a day-to-day basis. So number 1, you've got to have weekly progress meetings, whether it's an entire company together, whether it's department by department, whether it's smaller teams that you bring together, you've got to have them every single week. This is where you discuss what's going on, who's doing it by when, and as you go through every task that's got to be done, you can teach people along the way. You can coach them. Okay? You can add to their tasks, you can help them understand how to do the task better. But they also get the opportunity to report back in front of the entire team, which is key for their development. Okay. Number 2, proactive meetings. By this I mean proactive management meetings. A lot of the time people, the reason people waste a lot of time on management is that they're reactive. They're not proactive managers. So what does it mean? Well, it's waiting for the problem to happen and then talk to people, okay? Rather than preempting that problem before it actually has even arisen. And this, I personally believe that you should be having a meeting with your direct reports every week. You should have half an hour meeting with them, direct one-to-ones, asking them about where they're at, what's going on, how they're doing it, how's the job going, and if you're having that one-to-one meeting with them proactively every week, and gradually that half an hour could come down to 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but you have to remember that sometimes some of your employees will actually need an hour with you, or you've got to do half an hour every day with them to start off with, but you're being proactive. So it will save you a lot of time, energy, and a lot of headaches for the future, because there'll be less fires to put out, because you'll get to it beforehand. Now, the next one is the 20-60-20 rule. And I love this because it's so true. I personally believe that 20% into a task, you should check on that employee. And when there's 20% left on the task, you should also check in on that employee. Well, what do I mean? Okay. So for example, I've given you a job and it's got a deadline of a month. Okay, so that's 30 days. So 6 days in, I want to check on your activity. And about 6 days to go, I want to check where you are on it. Because then I'm actively being proactive in managing the work. Okay. So when there's tasks to be done, this 20-60-20 rule works really well, and you just think, you're checking in on them, but you're proactively, okay? So you're actually putting out any fires before they've arisen. You've not waited to the end of 30 days for them then to, for you to, potentially it not getting done. So therefore, are you going back down to creating that blame, those excuses and that denial? So number 4, another great tip for management is walking around. Management by walking around. Sitting at your desk all day is the crisis of management. Okay, so pop it in your diary or have your phone beep, you 2 or 3 times a day. So you just get up and walk around that office, get up and go and see what people are doing, get up and walk the factory floor if you're in a factory, get up and go and look at stuff, meet others, go to the other offices, whatever you need to do to get that better level of management. Because by walking around, you will hear things, you will see things, you'll be able to get in front of them. I often say, to coaching a client at the moment, you say to them, get in there before your staff. Once a week, once a month, get in there at 6 o'clock, get in there before your staff, walk around, radical thought, open the mail, and once you've opened that mail, ask questions. What's that? Where's that? And you'll get on top of the game. Okay? Because all of a sudden you'll be giving yourself the knowledge by looking at things, by seeing things that you didn't have before. Next is the daily KPI to achieve, okay? Or daily KPI or to achieve. So every day people should have a measure of their key performance indicators. Where did they get to today? What is their performance level today? How did they do today? What percentage of that task is completed now? Okay. But they also should always write their to achieve or their to-do list every day. Now, many of us, and I know there's loads of people out there that actually write their to-do list in the morning. So I would have come in today and I would write my to-do list for today, this morning when I come into work. However, here's a radical thought. Don't write it on the morning, write it the night before. Okay? Write it before the end of the day where things are fresh in your mind. So you can just crack on with them when you come in rather than wasting half an hour, kind of go, oh, I forgot everything on my to-do list. Let's think a little bit more. Oh, that in itself, if you do it when it's fresh in your mind, light bulb moment going off, at the end of the day, what you haven't achieved, what you need to achieve, what you need to do the next day. The next morning, there's been an entire evening, you may have forgotten it. Every employee needs to do one of these, every single day, including you as the business owner. Finally, read the 1 Minute Manager. I've got it on there. It's a very simple little book on management. And whether it's the 1 Minute Manager or another management book, I personally think it's a really good little series on how to be a manager. Because I've said before, less leadership, more management would get a lot more performance in a lot more companies out there today. So less leadership, more management, in my opinion. Now, here are 6 tips for great leadership, because we also need to look at leadership. How do we make sure we do great leadership on day-to-day basis? Well, number 1, we lead players, not team. And what do we mean? What do we mean by this? Because everybody like, Brad always talks about how he learned this many years ago. And he was chatting to one of the great rugby league coaches in Australia. His name was Wayne Bennett. He was having a conversation with Wayne about leading. And he asked, how do you coach your team? And he said, you don't coach your team, you coach players. What does he mean by this? And he said, very simply put, if I coached every single player in the same way, I would never get a high performance team. Okay? Because every player needs to be coached differently. And it's the same in your business. Every person in your team needs to be led differently. So sit down and work out, can you list down every employee in your company and design a management and leadership strategy to get them to become a high performer? Absolutely, of course you can. You can easily sit down and do that. But one thing you need to remember is that everyone is different. Everyone is motivated or inspired in different ways. So remember, lead players, not the team. The second one is disc and VAC profiles. I've touched on this briefly before. Need to have a disc and VAC profiles for every member of every employee in your organization. I know in our previous company, we had disc and VAC profiles on our desks. So everybody could see what performance level is and how they're performing, and also how to manage them, how to lead them, how to communicate with them. So in other words, if I walked up to your desk and there's a sign which reminds me every time that you're a high I, then I would make sure that I spend that time talking to you about your personal life and stuff before we get into business, before we get into work. But if that piece of paper is reminding me that you're a high D, then I wouldn't bother doing that, because I know that you're not going to be excited about discussing how your family are. So make sure that you have these for every employee, especially when you're building your plan for them. And we as Action Coach can help you with that. There's a free version of a DISC report, and I can go in through that with a bit more detail. So again, pop your details in the chat and I will reach out to you. The third step is more communication. So great leadership is about communication. How often do you communicate with your team? How often do you tell them what's going on? How often do you sit down with them as a group and talk to them? The more you communicate with your team, the more you actually help them understand what's going on. The more you have conversations with the whole team, the better off their performance will be. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a one-on-one situation. It could be a newsletter, or it could be a daily meeting, or it could be a weekly video. Action Coach, we actually have a weekly video sent to us informing what is happening with Action Coach UK and Global. It makes you feel part of that bigger picture. And that goes on to number 4. How to be a great leader is the bigger picture. The bigger the picture you paint for people, the better. One of the things that happens is when people are stuck in a company, doing all the small stuff, that sometimes they don't see how it all comes together, how it creates that big picture. But you do, because you're the owner. And number 5, the brightness of the future. Talk about where they're going, talk about what's possible for them, show people in your employment, where the future lies, what steps are you taking with them, and point 6, just listen. Sometimes you just have to shut up as a business owner and listen, understanding that listening is probably the best thing you can do to get a result and know what's going on. Sometimes you get that people say to you that people aren't listening to you. You show them that you are, that you don't necessarily agree, but you are listening to them. It's very powerful, but it doesn't always mean that you have to agree with them. And then the final slide for today is all about leadership. It's a simple reminder on leadership. So if you look at the word leadership, okay, it's got lead and it's got ship in it. So you've got to set that example for your team. You've got to be the one that does the level of work that you require of them. So think about the sailboat. Where's the helm? It's at the back of the boat. Why? Okay, so you can see what's going on that boat while you're steering it. Sometimes you need to get in the back to be able to go in and see what's happening. And there's no use charging forward if everyone's not following you and you can't see what's going on behind you. So as a leader, you need to stand at the back sometimes in order to give direction to where the company is going, show people how it's moving, be that leader and guide people, or steer the boat from the helm and watch the sails and watch what's happening out in front of you, not what's going on behind you. So I want to leave you there with my thoughts on leadership and management. My question to you is, which one do you do better? Are you a leader or are you a manager? So thank you so much for joining me today. I will check back on all the comments. I will reach out to those people that need reaching out to, and if you have any further questions or you're interested in book club, profit club, disc or VAT profiles, then please do leave a comment in the chat boxes, or alternatively drop me an email at juliecameron@actioncoach.com and I will get back to you. So on Wednesday, just to give you a heads up, we have got our Lunch and Learn webinar, and I will be chatting to the amazing Sindame from the Federation of Small Businesses about his business journey so far. So I look forward to welcoming you all then. Thanks for joining me.